Dear viewers and students of Sericulture, today I am presenting a talk on the topic Constraints in Silk Production. In the present topic, we cover definition of constraints, types of constraints, constraints at different sectors of silk production, finance and its constraints, a special reference, approaches in constraints management. Constraint is defined as any problem or lacunae affecting in achieving the defined goal. The achievable goal may be in the form of production of mulberry leaf or production of cocoons or getting potential income. Constraints ultimately reduce yield and create yield gap. Production of silk required men, material and money. Lack of any one of the requirement is treated as constraint in achieving high cocoon yield and income. Silk production or sericulture is an intensive agro-based activity involving physical and financial requirements and technical and managerial skills. Farmers need to handle these skills and requirements at specific time in a specific manner. Production of silk involves two important components, which is production of quality mulberry leaf and feeding such leaf to silkworm caterpillar to produce cocoons. Since the production of mulberry is continuous process, the depletion of nutrients in soil is bound to happen. Hence, the maintenance of fertility level of the soil to get optimum output of mulberry is very essential. This is possible only when soil health is maintained by providing inputs like water, air and nutrients. Since the mulberry leaf is grown and harvested throughout the year, the input to the soil is to be maintained, keeping the output of mulberry per unit area. Similarly, silkworm rearing is also involves many activities, requirements and skills in operating the activity. To begin silkworm rearing, a rearing house specially built for ideal rearing required. Next is brushing of quality silkworm eggs. The rearing house should provide ideal environment conditions suitable for silkworm larvae. In addition, farmers need to have other rearing tools and requirements for maintaining hygiene in and around rearing house and disease management. Since the sericulture involves lot of agricultural activities and rearing in a large scale, it involves labor power. The labor power is required at various activities like preparation of land, cultivation, manuring, de-weeding, harvesting leaf, transportation, feeding silkworm larvae, cleaning silkworm bed, picking ripened larvae and spreading over mountages to spin cocoon, harvesting cocoon, spreading cocoon, picking cocoons and transporting to the market, maintaining cocoons at market, cleaning the rearing house, disinfecting rearing house, routinely feeding larvae, etc. Types of constraints. Financial constraints. Finance is the primary requirement of any entrepreneur or goal-oriented activity. Most of the activities of any organization are actively depends on timely input of finance. Finance determines the effective and efficient implementation of the activity by providing all the inputs for the activity. In silk production activity, the finance input is very important input which determines the flow of other inputs required for the production of mulberry leaf and cocoon at various levels. Normally, finance is the first step to ensure before starting any activity. Compromising at any level of its input leads to failure of implementation and realization of productivity. Hence, availability of finance or funds should be ensured before initiating any venture. The biggest constraint that a farmer involved in silk production faced is the finance constraint. More than 70% of the farmers express the financial constraints for not attaining the required production of silk or the failures into the silkworm rearing. Increased production cost, involvement of many inputs at various levels of silk production demand finance. Majority of the farmers grow mulberry and silkworm or come under marginal farmers or farmers have low income group. Hence, financial requirements for sericulture is linked with bank loans and reducing the farmers' burden by government subsidies and different physical requirements like construction of rearing house, purchase of disinfectants, rearing tools, fertilizers and such other inputs. Improper and untimely utilization of subsidies also leads to lower production of cocoons and ultimately leading to loss. Knowledge or know-how constraints. Production potential of silk per unit area has been increased many folds due to the new technology interventions developed by scientists working in the area of sericulture. Production of cocoon from 30 kg per 100 AFLs during 1970s has been increased to 80 kg per 100 AFLs during 2011 and 12. This is possible only when knowledge or know-how are implemented at different levels of operation or silk production. Farmers were harvesting only 6,000 to 7,000 kg of leaf per hectare per year by growing local varieties of mulberry. Presently, they are able to harvest 40,000 to 50,000 kg of mulberry leaf per hectare per year. This is possible by the technologies or knowledge and know-how. Earlier farmers used to feed silkworm 6 to 7 times per day, involving labor dedicated for that purpose. Presently, 1 to 2 feedings per day is enough and farmers can attain other work. There are more than 100 technologies available in the field of silk production which are aimed to reduce cost, increase yield, increase efficiency and to increase the quality of product. Diseases and pests were the constraints for high yield and cause for crop losses. Many products are available to control pests and diseases, finally increasing yield. In a study, it was found that 50% of the respondents not used Oozy net, hence pest Oozy fly was a big constraint in cocoon production. Similarly, disease of silkworm with flatchery, grassery, muscardine and pebrine were also contributing towards the list of constraints. Physical constraints relates lack of physical requirements to attain targeted yield. Silk production requires lot of physical facilities, structures, materials, tools at various levels of its operation. To grow quality mulberry leaf, good fertile land with irrigation facility is required. Similarly, to grow silkworm larvae, a separate rearing house especially designed for good ventilation and protection from insect pest is required. Many rearing tools like rearing stands, rearing trays, tools require to maintain temperature and humidity, tools and implements to cultivation of land and handling mulberry are essential. To control diseases and pests of mulberry and silkworm, disinfectants and disease controlling chemicals are required. Lack of any one of these requirements or maintenance of quality of these requirements for their optimal performance will become the constraint for the production of silk. Hence, farmers need to ensure the availability of these physical requirements for optimal production of silk. As per a study, it was found that 48.5% of the respondents never received the extension or know-how of sericulture. Improper rearing house was also found a constraint in yield as expressed by 41.67 respondents. Poor ventilation in rearing house, flooring, insulation against external temperature extremes, shortage of irrigation water during summer were also found to affect the yield. High cost of rearing equipments to the tune of 29.1% respondents, difficulties in procuring mountages and cost and non-availability at times to the tune of 24.1% respondents were also constraints responsible for not attaining the good yield. Non-availability or impossibility of good quality of mulberry leaf to feed silkworm to the tune of 18.33% of the respondent. Non-availability of inputs in time, that is to the tune of 16.67% respondent, and non-availability of the ensured DFLs was also contributed for low yield, that is to the tune of 11.67% of the respondents. Labor constraints. Labor problem is a national problem. Agriculture is becoming low priority due to shortage of irrigation water and low or no rain. Hence, migration of labor to urban side is becoming common phenomenon. The labor from villages does construction and garment factory jobs. Hence, non-availability of labor at villages affecting agriculture in general and sericulture in particular is becoming very common. According to a study, 52% of respondents in a survey expressed that shortage of labor caused low production of cocoon. Since sericulture or production of cocoon involved intensive labor, lack of which affects the production and is a big constraint. In addition, government schemes to create labor at village level, providing construction of roads, etc., also led non-availability of labor for agriculture sector. High labor cost due to non-availability is also becoming constraints to higher labor in silk production. Availability of dedicated and trustworthy labor has become one of the greatest challenges. Since this is a labor intensive industry, if one does not find people at the right time to feed the silkworm with mulberry leaves, to manage cleanliness of the rearing house by disinfecting it, then it is sure that he is bound to incur a loss. With the rapid urbanization, more and more people are moving towards cities where they can earn higher wages. This has led to shortage of labor in the sericulture. High wages are demanded by laborers, which either cut on the profit or makes it very difficult to break even. From the production perspectives, with becoming of IT, BPO, services which offer employment opportunities even for non-skilled people like security guards, office boy, etc. Many people prefer being employed in the industries when compared to sericulture sector. Thus, labor constraints prevail not only in the silkworm rearing stage, but is also seen in silk reeling and silk dyeing stages. Managerial constraints. Inadequate knowledge in silk production, lack of interest, financial constraints add to managerial problems. Farmers do experience the improper management of resources and manpower available at village level. Some farmers do manage well within the available resources. The skill of managing, planning, preparing for problem in advance is essential in silk production. Education and training in silk production is helpful in learning the skill of management. The socio-economic conditions of the farmer play a major role in solving managerial constraints. The rational approach of managing the house also influences the managerial constraints. lack of freedom in traditional family inhibit taking proper decision at a right time. Climatic or weather constraints. Silkworm rearing involves control on influence of extreme climatic factors during rearing. Silkworm is sensitive to high temperature beyond 30 degrees Celsius and below 20 degrees Celsius of temperature, and humidity beyond 85% and below 60%. It is natural phenomena to find natural extremities in climate factors. Farmers have less or no choice in managing such climate extremes. The heavy, untimely rain, higher temperature, high humidity induces pests and diseases in silkworm and mulberry production. These extremes also affect the quality of leaf available in the rearing beds for larvae. Low-cost technologies have been developed to control smaller variations in temperature and humidity. The extreme climate or weather affects total cocoon crop loss or partial crop loss. Constraints of silk production could be understood under 5 sectors of silk production. They are: establishing physical requirements for silkworm rearing, production of quality mulberry leaf, production of cocoons by rearing silkworm, marketing of cocoons, acquiring skills and knowledge required. Silkworms are reared in a separate rearing house, especially built with specific requirements. The investments to construct a rearing house to rear 300 disease-free layings varies from Rs 30,000 to 2.5 lakhs. In addition to the rearing house, rearing stands, rearing trays, leaf storing and handling requirements adds to the cost. Farmers constrained to have a separate rearing house, though they do not have a separate house to live themselves. Low-cost rearing houses are also designed for such targeted farms. A farmer with a low income finds difficulty in investing for rearing house. He tries to rear silkworm in his dwelling house. Silkworm reared in such condition succumbed to diseases due to lack of hygiene and improper disinfection. To maintain the rearing house free from pathogens, he needs disinfectants, lime powder, bleaching powder and such chemicals. To control or to prevent diseases, he needs disinfectants, which further adds to his cost. Sometimes even a farmer ready to use disinfectant, they may not be available at his place. At times, the quality of such general and bed disinfectants are not guaranteed. At every level of such physical requirements, farmer need finance, knowledge about the product, skills to use them in right concentration and right time. Many times farmers compromises at one or many levels and experience them as constraints. Availability of groundwater is one of the most important factors which decides the sericulture activity. In majority of silk growing states in India and other countries, the availability of water is becoming limiting factor for silk production. Though rain-fed areas in Karnataka were used for growing mulberry, the quality and the productivity of silk is not profitable. To dig a borewell and spending on accessories to draw water to the land will be a burden on the farmer. Non-availability of electricity to run borewell is also a constraint for silk production. To maintain the soil health for continued production of mulberry, organic manure is essential. Farmers do experience difficulty in applying organic manure to the garden since the size of the production of organic manure has drastically reduced in villages. Cocoon production by rearing silkworms involves series of technical skills. The traditional approaches followed hitherto need to change for increasing productivity, quality and minimize expenditure. Marketing activities mainly revolve around the 4 P's of marketing, which are product, price, promotion and place. Each of above mentioned pose their own challenges in the field of marketing. Talking about the product, one needs to emphasize on the future advantages and design of the product. In marketing silk, one needs to emphasize on quality and product. The greatest challenge is to consistently produce standardized high quality silk and ensure that it is emphasized in the marketing commercialization mix. Price is another differentiator which helps in winning over competitors. Pricing strategy is a great challenge in itself. One needs to ensure that competitive prices are offered without cutting on the profit margins. Based on a study conducted by Karnataka State Sericulture Research Institute, it was found that only 30 to 40% of technologies available are adopted by only 40% of farmers. The big gap of skill and technology know-how has to be reached to the cocoon or silk producer. The technologies developed and various aspects of silk production need to be adopted at the farmers level. Finance is one of the major constraints in silk production. Cost involved setting up rearing facility and ensuring that it is operating efficiently. Costs are involved in procuring good quality eggs. Huge labor costs are again a constraint. In the production phase, setting up a production unit and silk reeling technology and equipments involves investments. Silk dyeing machine and dye is altogether another area which requires specialized know-how and set of skills to ensure good quality produced for the end customers. Thus, at the farmers level and at production level, costs are involved. After understanding the constraints, new models need to be developed between farmer, research institute and financial institute, government as a mediator in promoting, adopting and implementing silk production. This is possible to transfer the technologies to the field by linking the fund and the knowledge. This helps to develop infrastructures at farmer's house at his interest. Then working model could be multiplied in other area.